Yeah, so I think maybe we just kick it off, get it started. So a warm welcome and thanks everyone for making this, for coming to this meeting. So it's really exciting to see so many people joining this meeting, and as well to see so many people who are joining this trial, which is growing over and over time. And so on behalf of the steering committee, so Dr. Hayland, Dr. Lee Kensio, and Dr. Hill, so it's my pleasure to give this little introduction here. I think we are in a quite amazing phase right now. So we recognize more and more recruitments. Yeah, so I think we recently have recruited in Quebec the 46th patients. So congratulations to that, and many thanks for your enormous effort to make this happen. We know that this is really challenging. And yeah, the team in Europe is as well doing an amazing job. So we have really a regulatory challenge. So to do a so-called CITES application, which is a new regulatory requirement in Europe. So thanks to Michael, Maureen, Shauna, and the team from GCP Service to make this happen, and as well to the team in Belgium, in France, in Germany, and the countries in Portugal and Poland, so which already helped to provide all the numerous documents which we need to make this happen. And thanks for your patience. So it is not we that who need that. It's really the regulatory authorities like the EMA and so on. And it's my pleasure as well to welcome those sites like from Tunisia, from Egypt. We have some contacts in China, which is exciting, some interests from Australia, Japan. So it's growing all over the world. And so please apologize if I cannot welcome everyone individually in person here, but I'm very happy to make you make the introduction later on. So we just thought during the process of the study that we had a lot of conversations, like for example, to name yours, François. So we recognized that other burn surgeons and researchers and intensivists had as well some further research interests. Yeah, and we just thought, like, Darren and this re-energized team did an enormous job to build up this network, so that we just thought that it might be useful to set up such a meeting on a frequent basis to talk about the progress of the study, to inform you about news and new challenges, new opportunities as well, or to talk about, like, hey, there's a meeting from the American Burn Association, or can we meet during the European Burn Association, or Darren is going to Italy, for example, to keep us informed about that, so that we really grow together as network, and that we can as well try to take advantage of this network. And if there are additional research ideas, we may open this network to additional research ideas, which could be so easy to make this happen, to realize these through this network. And Darren, I don't know if I've missed here anything in the introduction, or Eileen, please let me know about that. Otherwise, I would hand it over, give this the microphone over to you, Darren, to give us a brief introduction and to give you a talk about the so-called effort protein trial. It has a reason why you are giving this talk here, but I let you to explain the backgrounds about that. And sure. Thank you so much for giving the presentation to us.
No, thank you, Christian, and great to be with you all. I can't tell you how touched I am by the collaborative spirit that exists within this community, both building from the Re-Energize trial, where we had over 60 of you and your colleagues network together, and now more centers from other places joining. And really what's evolving is, the capacity to do multi-center clinical research in the burn community. And I feel like when I started as an ICU doctor 25 years ago, we're kind of where you as a community are at, where we just didn't have that capacity. We didn't have those networks. Whereas today, in ICU medicine, almost every week there's a published large-scale RCT in one of the major journals being published, because we have those networks, we have that capacity. And so although this is the VICToRY team meeting, I'm actually going to be talking about an ICU trial, the EFFORT trial that was just published last month in the Lancet, as a way of seeding ideas to you as a community of what other types of projects we might work on together. And because this trial, I think, is so informative to clinical practice, even in burn patients, we wanted to bring it to your attention as well. And so this was the EFFORT trial, where we randomized ICU patients at nutritional high risk to receive high dose protein, 2.2 grams per kilogram per day, or usual dose, which is 1.2 or less. And our primary outcome initially was a 60-day mortality, and our sample size was 4,000. However, due to COVID and struggles doing non-COVID research in ICUs, we had to terminate the trial early with just over 1,200 patients, and we switched our primary outcome to time to discharge alive. I won't go through the background rationale for protein and the dose of protein, other than to say the existing guidelines gave a wide range of acceptable doses and explicitly acknowledged the low quality of the underlying evidence. And so we had a hypothesis that prescribing more protein would lead to greater protein delivery, which would lead to improved outcomes in terms of survival and discharge and recovery, compared to continuing the usual dose of what we were observing in ICUs at that time. And here, what I'm showing you are the inclusion criteria. This is a pragmatic trial, and so there weren't a lot of detailed inclusion or exclusion criteria. But the other significant point of the EFFORT trial was to focus on what we called nutritionally high risk. So prior, we had thought all ICU patients are the same in how they'll respond to nutrition. Perhaps you maintain that belief in the burn community as well, but we're evolving even within these high-risk patients to determine higher risk concepts of who may benefit the most from our artificial nutrition therapy. And so I won't go through these in detail. You can see them on the slide there, just to emphasize that this was meant to be a subset of nutritionally high-risk patients where we thought we would see a benefit from high protein. I want to acknowledge at this point that there are no burn centers. Sorry, I missed up. There's one burn center that joined the collaborative. There are 5 burn patients in this trial. But I tried to recruit burn centers to the initiative, and I couldn't, because too many practitioners held a firm belief that high protein was necessary for their patients. And so they didn't have that equipoise. They weren't willing to randomize, and hold on to that thought as we review the results together and then discuss the implications of that. And so I've already identified the randomization structure, 2.2 versus 1.2. And I just want to stress that that was the only feature that we've constrained practitioners to do, was to aim for a certain prescription. The rest of clinical care was determined by the site. There was no protocolization of product or protocols. It was standard of care except for that prescription. We had tremendous collaborations from around the world, and we had ICUs, 85 ICUs from 1,600 countries. Ultimately, we were able to enroll 1,300 patients. I'll move quickly through these slides so you can see the primary publication in the Lancet if you're interested in the details, but we had good balance between the two groups of patients. And again, I misspoke. There's only 6 burn patients in this trial from 1 burn unit that was involved. Majority of these patients are patients with respiratory failure, with some background sepsis, trauma, and other sundry admission diagnoses. About 10% of our patients were on RRT, renal replacement therapy at baseline, 25% having levels of acute kidney injury at baseline, and just under 10% having chronic kidney disease at baseline. This will be important as we interpret the results. Here I'm showing you the amount of nutrition received by group over time. So you can see from day 1, day 2, by day 3, good separation of groups. And so this is the introduction of high protein in the early phase of critical illness that was sustained throughout the stay in the ICU of patients enrolled in this trial. And if I summarize the amount of nutrition received by the 2 groups, in the high protein group, on average, they received 1.6. On average, the usual care group received 0.9, so a separation of about 0.7. This was an intervention that only impacted the protein prescription. The caloric, energy delivery was the same between the 2 groups, and patients received on average about 23 calories per kilogram per day. Here's our primary outcome. We failed to show a positive impact of our high protein dosing. This is the cumulative incidence of time to discharge alive. And so having a higher slope, a faster slope is good. And the red line is on top. The red line is the usual dose protein. So it wasn't even a hint that the higher dose protein achieved a better outcome. If we look at the right-hand side of the slide, you see the hazard ratios. A lower number is bad, or said differently, a greater than 1 is a faster time to discharge alive, and our unadjusted and adjusted hazard ratios do not give any suggestion of a treatment effect. In fact, if you look at the upper end of the 95% confidence interval, it almost rules out a clinically important improvement in the time to discharge alive. We did several a priori subgroup analyses, thinking that older patients might benefit more from higher protein because of the anabolic resistance that develops as you age. We thought that perhaps patients with a higher BMI might benefit more from more protein. We thought sicker patients who are more catabolic, and here we could include, trauma burn patients here, although we don't have enough, but just as similar to trauma or high Apache, high SOFA scores, that they may benefit the most from higher protein. And in none of these instances do we see a favorable effect of high protein. Here you see the individual hazard ratios of each of these point estimates. The p-value here is the extent to which these 2 subgroups are really different from each other. And so if I just scan down the right-hand column, you see a trend here towards actually low nutric patients benefiting from higher protein, or higher SOFA score patients benefiting from usual dose protein. Or here, a significant finding, patients with AKI at baseline benefited from usual dose. To say that differently, are harmed by high dose protein. Patients with sarcopenia, a tendency towards a benefit of usual dose protein if they were sarcopenic. Some of these ideas are contra what we thought going into the trial. We thought the sarcopenic patients, we thought the high obesity patients, we thought the sicker patients would benefit the most from high protein. In no instance do we confirm that hypothesis. In fact, in some instances, it's moving in the opposite direction. The most significant, again, being patients with AKI harmed by high protein, and maybe 2 patients with high SOFA scores or multiple organ failure. Secondary outcome was 60-day mortality. No difference between the 2 groups, whether unadjusted or adjusted in different ways. And again, same paradigm of subgroup analysis. Now I'm reporting 60-day mortality, not time to discharge alive. And the signals are present here too with respect to AKI that they benefit a lot from having the usual dose, as well as patients with SOFA scores, that one just short of statistical significance. So a number of other traditional duration of stay variables, no difference between the two groups. So here we have it, one of the largest trial of protein dosing in critically ill patients, where we achieved a separation of group. This is really practice-based, and so it's real-world medicine. And in achieving those separations between the two groups, we were unable to show a benefit of higher protein, and in fact showed harm with the sicker patients who had AKI and multiple organ failure at baseline. And so what application does this have to the practice of nutrition in burn units? And here I show you the level of evidence supporting current practices, which are high dose protein, anywhere from 2 to 3 grams per kilogram per day, are being prescribed in burn units around the world. And there's only 4 small single center RCTs from more than 20 years ago. None of them are done in adults, all in children. And so the evidence base for your practice in the burn center is quite weak, and feel like there's a real need to generate some evidence about what you do in burn patients, particularly with respect to protein dose. I feel like this trial is informative a little bit in that it demonstrated that the treatment effect of nutrition intervention is less or even non-existent in highly catabolic, inflamed, sick patients, which is consistent with what we show. And so this is, don't get confused, this is also known as the EFFORT trial, but it was in hospitalized patients, and it was intensive medical therapy, nutrition medical therapy given to hospitalized patients. Overall, they showed an improvement in 30-day mortality, but in a secondary publication now, they've come and shown that if you categorize people based on baseline C-reactive protein, so their baseline level of inflammation, you see the treatment effect all in patients who had low or moderate inflammation, no treatment effect in inflamed, presumably catabolic patients. And so how does that apply, to your burn patient population? One of our subgroup effects was that we saw harm in patients with AKI, and I just draw your attention to 2 other prior pieces of work, which are both post hoc analyses of RCTs, where in this instance, they gave intravenous amino acid, and in this instance, we gave high-dose glutamine to patients, and overall showed no treatment effect. But in post hoc analysis, we showed harm in people with baseline kidney injury. And so there's 3 points now that help us triangulate that perhaps high-dose protein is harmful in baseline AKI. The third discussion point might be that, hey, we only looked at mortality, length of stay, time to discharge alive. There are other relevant endpoints where protein may be having a positive treatment effect. If you consider the randomized trials to date that we systematically reviewed and published last year, showing that increased protein attenuates muscle loss, that it may be that functional or performance-based measures may detect a treatment effect with higher dose protein. So that program of research continues, led by my colleague from Malaysia, Zhengyi Li. We are continue to evaluate high dose protein versus usual care in an EFFORT sub-study, where now our outcomes are 6-minute walk test and a battery of other functional and performance measures. And the other and final discussion point from this trial might be that in truth, we didn't consider the timing of protein administration. There may be different phases of anabolism, catabolism, inflammation, hypoinflammation, immunity that occur over an ICU, an individual patient's ICU stay. And the precise timing of those phases are really unknown. It's more of a conceptual understanding. And we applied high protein in a very early phase, and we're not able to show a difference. In fact, showed harm in those subpopulations. But it may be that applied later when they're less catabolic, less inflamed, that protein has benefit. And so I'll stop there. I'm happy to take a few questions. I'm really just trying to help this research network, understand what best practices for nutrition might be in your patients today, i.e. don't give high protein to patients in AKI or severe organ failure, and maybe not even those that are inflamed severely. And B, we need more research on this topic in your community. So thanks for listening to me, Nader, and I'll take a few questions and then turn the time back to Christian.
Thank you, Darren. So does anyone has questions? You can either just stand up virtually or, yeah, Eileen.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation, Darren. I do have a question. Do we know how many % of the burn patients experience AKI?
Well, again, there were only six burn patients in this trial.
But from Re-Energize, do we know how many patients experience AKI?
We, off the top of my head, it's not as common as in our ICU, general ICU studies. I would say it would be between 10 to 15%, in contrast to the 25% that we saw in the ICU world. And by the way, we're tracking this quite carefully in the VICToRY trial, both because it's part of our primary endpoint, persistent organ dysfunction, which is looking at both the use of renal replacement therapy, mechanical ventilation, and any cardiovascular support, and because we're not sure if vitamin C in high dose is good for the kidney. A couple of data points suggesting that the continuous administration of intravenous vitamin C may be harmful to the kidney, and yet conceptually, acute kidney injury, which is a disease of oxidative stress, might be benefited by an antioxidant. And so we're tracking this quite carefully in the context of the VICToRY trial.
Thank you, Darren.
Any further questions or suggestions? Darren, I just thought maybe you can just add to your list from the volume resuscitation viewpoint. It may as well maybe at least of interest to do something with protein. Yeah, so as historically, for example, fresh frozen plasmas have been used in the early resuscitation phase, and it may be just another argument, so which underlines the potential value which a high protein strategy may have in these patients to support that.
Yep, something to think about. Thank you. Please feel free to interact with me via email if you have further questions, want further clarifications on implications for practice, or if you have interest in pursuing this from a research point of view, because it's a real open and important question in the burn community, in my opinion.
And in addition to that, so next to these, or parallel to these, there are already a lot of other research activities open. So as well, to those of you who have interest, who had not yet been contacted or who had not yet a chance to get involved, please let us know. For example, if you're interested in some secondary analysis or else about that. So this here really should enable that, should make this happen, and should as well be a platform for your ideas to present maybe during a later meeting or so. All right, so no further questions about the potential role of proteins in burn patients. Thank you so much, Darren. Again, congratulations for this fantastic publication, which really received so much attention, and thank you so much for giving this presentation here. So I think next on the agenda is then a brief walk through the operational updates. so that everyone knows roughly about where we are. So what are the overall performance metrics? And Shona, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Can you give us a brief update about the current status, like recruitments and
Oh, well, you had already sort of updated us on that
Yeah.
at the beginning, that we're
if there's
currently,
any
46 patients, and the last patient was enrolled at Enfant Jésus. So we are keeping our fingers crossed that we will continue to get additional enrollments.
Yeah. So regarding Europe, we are happy to announce that the first European sites are open. So it's Aachen. Thank you, Eileen. And it's Cologne. Thank you to Uli and Stefan. I saw you here in the chat in Cologne. And the next sites which will open are in Ludwigshafen. So this is a site from Gabriel Hundeshagen and Christian Tapkin. So thank you as well, Michael, in the background for making this happen, to work on this. So we really need a lot to do to make this happen. And so here are the next countries which we are expecting to become active are then, or depending then on the CITES application, so and the CITES approval from the European Regulatory Authority, which then is France, Portugal, Poland, and Spain. Did I miss a country? I don't hope so. So it's hard to predict when this will be. We hope to do the CITES submission within the next weeks. And after another turnaround review process from 1 to 2 months, it's hard to say if we have to revise the documents and so on, as this is a pretty new submission format. We can plan the activation of the sites as well in Italy, where Darren will travel to, I think, in early May. Other updates. So I think it is as well helpful for us to know if someone of you is traveling to the European Burn Association meeting. I think it's in Nantes, was it not? I'm mixing sometimes up Nice and Nantes. Sorry for that. Nice is the Aspen Congress. No, Nantes. It's the EBA Congress. So can I briefly know from you who's traveling there? Because I think it's always helpful for me / us to think about, to plan there a meeting with investigators. So can you just raise your hand virtually? Thank you, Nadia. You are traveling, so I counted on you. Yeah. Okay, so a couple of you unfortunately won't. François, thank you. All right. Oh, great. Yeah, at least a few. So then we will keep you updated about that if we can organize a local meeting there. Are there any other points which you, as investigators, as part of this network, would like to exchange, which you would like to be presented here, which you would like to first develop as part of this network? Would you be interested to yourself do a presentation about an idea which you have, which you would like to share? Sometimes it could as well be easy strategies like a questionnaire, which you would like to distribute here through the colleagues or else. Please let me know about that. Oh, thank you. She will attend the ABA. I did not ask who will attend the ABA, so because I thought it's earlier. Okay, so who is going to the ABA? Sorry, someone going to the ABA. Dr. Wibbenmeyer is going there. All right. If this is not the case, any further questions, suggestions about other topics which we should and want to discuss in future, Or do you have any problems during the recruitment which you would like to discuss? Any operational challenges? Oh, thank you. The team of HubOfU will go to the ABA. Thank you for pointing out that this is in May. Yeah, I think the ABA, the European, is in September, and the ABA is in May. Thank you for that. All right. So, Darren, can I briefly ask? So, your next time, the next Congress where you are traveling to is the Congress in Italy during early May. Are there other associated travels which you had planned in April? I think it's South America. Is it correct?
Yeah, just to site visits to Daisy Grau in Asuncion, Paraguay, and our colleagues in Bogota, Colombia, who are joining the collaborative. That's not a conference.
Okay, great. Yes, so through the next meetings, yeah, so it is pointed out on the agenda. We will as well we are happy to take homework. So if you have anything again which you want us to present, what you would like to discuss here, or which you would like to develop here, let us know. So then we are listing them as action items. Then we are happy to work on them, happy to make it happen, so that we can revisit them during one of our next upcoming meetings. As we are right now in this phase of to start new sites, especially with focus on Italy, Spain, Europe. So we thought that it may be that there might be a value to set this meeting up at least for 45 minutes each month during the next month, so that we really know about precisely what is going on, where might be problems, and so on, so that we can enable and facilitate the exchange on this level. Yes, so Darren.
Christian, I think it might also be worth saying that in future meetings, one of the roles of this meeting is to keep people abreast of the evolving literature on vitamin C in critical illness in general. Now, there's not much evolving in burn patients specifically. That's why we're doing this trial, but Christian and I are very involved in and aware of other publications in the general ICU literature. And so, in fact, last week we published an updated systematic review of monotherapy high-dose vitamin C in sepsis patients. And there's been several, post hoc publications or commentaries on the Lovett trial, which was a pivotal trial in sepsis. And so we'd like to bring that to this forum and discuss with you so that you are aware of this literature and how it evolves, and then reflect back on how that impacts VICToRY and on the trial conduct in your site. The Lovett COVID and the REMAT-CAP COVID vitamin C trial are also going to be published shortly, and I have some confidential data that I can share in the future on that and how that impacts VICToRY. So stay tuned for more on vitamin C as we evolve these meetings moving forward.
Thank you for this comment. That's really great. All right, so our next meeting right now, so sorry, it is scheduled. I thought we will let you know about when it's scheduled, because on my notes it's still there's still the date of May, if someone knows about that. I think we scheduled this for April actually, but we'll send out an invite within the next weeks. Otherwise, please just feel free to think creative, to think crazy about any ideas or thoughts which you have. Thank you so much for all your support as part of this VICToRY tribe, but as well as part of this network here. And yeah, Darren, is there anything else which I may have missed?
No,
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think I'm always happy to give everyone back some minutes to your day, some lifetime back to your day. So, because I know that everyone is busy and almost has to go to bed and so on. So then I'm happy to give you back 22 minutes of your day. Thank you so much for your support. See you soon and have a great day.
Thanks,
And
Christian.
Christian, I have the next meeting in my calendar as April 20th.
Thank you. I knew that there was something. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.